7 diplomats are calling for humanitarian pauses in the Israel-Hamas war.
And later, a strike notice has been issued for IMP aerospace workers in Nova Scotia.
We'll look back at last night in the NHL, including a loss of Montreal, the Raptors in Dallas tonight, and news from the Blue Jays, who kind of made changes. Sports at 15.
Rally looks ready to roll on. The Dow futures up 30 points. The Dow's coming off a 7-day uptrend. Nasdaq's been up 8 in a row. Business at 26.
Traffic for Halifax Heat Pumps and Electrical. Stay warm and cozy all winter long with the home comfort experts at Halifax Heat Pumps and Electrical.
City News Time, 9:01.
It is time now for traffic and weather together on the ones, and with a look at Halifax roads, here's Gord Taylor.
It's down to one lane. An emergency crews remain on scene on a collision on the 102 inbound near the Metro self-storage. Traffic is backed up past Lacewood. Looking a little better along Magazine Hill, but it's still pretty slow as you approach the Windmill Acrely intersection into Burnside. The Bedford Highway inbound is slow approaching Bayview into the Windsor Street Exchange, and still pretty busy traveling to and through the Armadale roundabout. Quinpool inbound is backed up towards Connaught. Black Friday is back, and every day feels like Friday in a new Nissan. Visit Nissan.ca or your local Nissan dealer for more information. Looking at your forecast, here's meteorologist Jesse Uppel.
Temperatures mild this morning near that seasonal mark, and then they continue to fall as we get through the afternoon. So pack the extra layers with you and be prepared for temperatures that feel below the freezing mark. Gusty west winds up to 40 kilometers per hour. We'll have mostly cloudy skies with a chance of a rain-snow mix by this afternoon, changing over to flurries by this evening. Chance of flurries through tonight, dropping down to -1. Will feel like -7, so very chilly conditions. And tomorrow, temperatures below that seasonal mark, a high of only 5 degrees. Strong winds out of the northwest, a mix of sun and cloud, and the chance of scattered showers and flurries. Friday, we're getting into the light rain and temperatures near 7 degrees. Today's guaranteed high, 8 degrees.
And currently in downtown Halifax, we're sitting at 5 degrees 4 at the airport. We'll have another check of traffic and weather together in less than 10 minutes. City News Time, 9:03.
Well, as you heard Gord mention in traffic there, it has been a tough commute this morning. Now, that crash on the 102 inbound causing some serious issues. Regional Police just issuing an update a couple of minutes ago saying that the 102 is now closed inbound at exit 2A. So right now, traffic being redirected onto Lacewood. Regional Police asking people to avoid that area if at all possible this morning. In its previous update, Regional Police had said that there were no reported injuries in that crash, but they do expect crews would be on the scene there likely for some time yet. We'll have another check on traffic and weather together coming up in about 7 minutes time at 9:11.
In our other news of the day, the premiers of Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan are emphasizing the need for provinces to be at the table when Ottawa strikes housing deals with municipalities. City's Chris Aleph with more.
The issue was a prominent part of the statement released Monday following a meeting of provincial premiers and territorial leaders in Halifax. Speaking at a press conference yesterday, Premier Tim Houston said they want a fair and honest relationship with the feds.
So right now we have a federal government that in many ways is acting like they believe in the divide and conquer approach to things. We see that with the car vote around the carbon tax. We see that around some of the funding announcements that, we wake up in the morning as premier and hear there's a funding announcement in the province with the federal government. So we just need to make sure that the relationship is fair and honest.
The statement calls for federal funding that flows exclusively through provinces and territories in order to address housing needs and support long-term capital planning. Chris Aleph, City News.
You're listening to City News. Well, a new report says the Federal Fisheries Department doing a poor job of monitoring Canada's fishing industry. Federal Environment Commissioner Jerry DeMarco says Fisheries and Oceans Canada lacking the ability to collect timely and dependable data about what's being caught. DeMarco says that means the department does not know whether commercial stocks are being overfished. He points to the collapse of the Atlantic cod population back in the 90s as an example of how much more expensive and difficult it can be to recover depleted stocks rather than keeping them healthy in the first place.
Well, turning to the Middle East now, where Canadian passport holders are leaving war-torn Gaza through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt for the first time since the war began. With dozens reaching Cairo yesterday, dozens more are expected to do so today. It comes as diplomats from several major powers continue to call for a humanitarian pause in the fighting, and a key U.S. official weighs in on the future of Gaza. Our Jamie Pulfer with the latest.
The reality this morning is that hundreds of Canadians are still trapped in Gaza, desperate to get to safety as the Israel-Hamas war plays out in real time around them. Global Affairs says 75 Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and their families made it across the Rafah border into Egypt yesterday. 40 more names have been added to the list allowed to leave today. And there are now calls for a humanitarian pause, not a full ceasefire in Gaza. That's coming from top G7 diplomats, including Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, after a meeting in Japan. The group is condemning Hamas and supporting Israel's right to defend itself. After the meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spelled out what the White House wants for a post-war Gaza: no Hamas and no Israeli occupation.
It is imperative that the Palestinian people be central to governance in Gaza and in the West Bank as well, and that, again, we don't see a reoccupation.
In Gaza today, Israel says its forces are at the heart of Gaza City, where they're targeting Hamas infrastructure and commanders there. Jamie Pulfer, City News.
Well, back here at home now, Halifax RCMP charging 3 teens following a crash in Lower Sackville. Police say a Halifax officer was on Highway 101 and saw a vehicle that had crashed into a cement barrier. The suspects fled the scene but were found in a nearby apartment building on Old Sackville Road. It was determined the vehicle had been stolen, police say, in Sydney and driven to Lower Sackville at the time of the crash. Those suspects all under the age of 18, according to police. They escaped injury and will be facing charges in youth court.
Well, a strike notice has been issued for IMP aerospace workers in Nova Scotia, according to a release from Unifor. Members at IMP aerospace locations in Hammonds Plains and Enfield will hit the picket lines on Friday at 1 p.m. The release states the Unifor members work as airframe mechanics, aircraft painters, technicians, and others. Kelly LeBlanc, the president of Local 2215, says members were not satisfied with the employer's latest offer and does not address today's affordability crisis.
The province's police watchdog says no reasonable grounds have been found that police in Bridgewater broke laws in relation to an incident from back in June. And the serious incident response team was investigating reports that a woman suffered a fractured hip after falling during an apparent altercation with first responders. The incident happening after crews were apparently called out to a large open fire on that woman's property in spite of a municipal fire ban in place at the time. Now, according to CERT, the woman was trying to prevent crews from putting that fire out when the injury happened. The agency concluding its investigation because it says the woman did not provide a statement, consent to releasing her medical records, or identify an officer.
And Canadian hip-hop legend Maestro Fresh Wes has announced the creation of a new scholarship in his name at Nova Scotia Community College. The rapper behind the classic Let Your Backbone Slide was announced as a 2024 inductee into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame yesterday, and says he's celebrating the honor by establishing that scholarship. The college says the annual award will support African, Nova Scotian, and Black students who are studying in the college's Trades and Transportation program, but it did not say how much the scholarship is worth. Wes says he hopes the annual award will inspire Black students to pursue skilled trades. Coming up in 60 seconds, traffic and weather together.
And we'll take a look at the latest in business news with the Market Minute.
City News Time, 9:10.
Traffic for LL Bean. Looking for the best outdoor activity this season? LL Bean has a fun range of winter sports from lightweight sleds, snowshoes, and sonic snow tubes and saucers. Shop LL Bean at Dartmouth Crossing.
City News Time, 9:11. It's time for traffic and weather together on the ones. And with a look at Halifax roads, here's Gord Taylor.
Oh, we've been working on a collision on the 102 inbound near the Metro self-storage. Just got a word from police that Highway 102 inbound is now closed at exit 2A. And you can detour via Lacewood Drive. Very slow through there as a deal with that collision. Maybe there till at least noon. Still busy on the Bedford Highway inbound as you approach the Winter Street Exchange. And still slow along Magazine Hill as you approach the Windmill Acrely intersection. Not seeing big delays in either the McDonald or McKay bridges. Black Friday is back and every day feels like Friday in a new Nissan. Visit Nissan.ca or your local local Nissan dealer for more information. Looking at your forecast, here's meteorologist Jesse Uppel.
Temperatures continue to fall through the day today, so pack the extra layers with you. We're also going to be getting into some active weather. A chance of a rain-snow mix as we get later into this morning into the afternoon, changing over to flurries by the evening hours and gusty winds out of the west. Cloudy tonight with a chance of flurries. -1 will be the overnight low. Will feel like -7 though with the winds. And tomorrow, a mix of sun and cloud, gusty wind out of the northwest. The chance of scattered showers and some flurries, a high of 5 degrees. Friday, we're cloudy with light rain developing, a high of 7 degrees. Today's guaranteed high, 8.
And right now in downtown Halifax, we're down to 5 degrees. It's 4 at the airport, coming down from that guaranteed high of 8 degrees. City News 95.7, the only radio station with a weather guarantee. And today's City Mazda jackpot stands at $1,450. For your chance to win, you can head to our website, halifax.citynews.ca, and follow the links. City News time 9:12. It's time for a Market Minute. Here's Mike Eppel.
Okay, we've got U.S. stock futures up 40 points on the Dow. The NASDAQ futures higher by 7, pointing to a positive start to the trading session this morning as the Dow Jones goes for an 8-day win streak, and the NASDAQ will try for a 9-day uptrend. We're already at the longest string of gains in 2 years for the Wall Street benchmarks. The TSX, meantime, has gone against that with a drop of 168 points Tuesday, led by a sell-off for energy stocks as the price for oil this morning continues to slump to another 3-month low. It's down $1.31 at 76.06. There's just been no increase that had been expected for demand for oil right now. So down goes the price for crude. Gold is down $4 at $19.69 an ounce. The Canadian dollar down 1/10 cent, 72.5 cents U.S. This is City News.
Number 1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is City News 95.7 everywhere.
We've got mostly cloudy skies, and it is 5 degrees in downtown Halifax. Good morning, I'm Mark Hodgins. Here's what's making news right now. Well, a pretty challenging drive into work this morning across the Halifax area. Still seeing some problems. The 102 inbound right now is closed at exit 2A because of a crash in that area. Police asking people to avoid the area. People heading down the 102 inbound will be redirected off the highway at Lacewood Drive right now. No injuries reported at this time, but police say crews likely to be on scene for a while yet. As well, the premiers of Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan making a public appearance yesterday, emphasizing the need, they say, for provinces to be at the table when Ottawa strikes housing deals with municipalities. And as well, Canadian passport holders leaving war-torn Gaza through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt for the first time now since that Israel-Hamas war began. City News time 9:15. You're listening to City News. Japan's foreign minister says the G7 needs unity and cooperation in tackling global conflicts and tensions.
In Tokyo, a pledge of support by Japan's foreign minister, Yoko Kamikawa, on a number of fronts.
It will send a clear message to the international community that we as the G7 stand with Ukraine, even while the international attention tends to be on the Middle East.
But the mood on the European continent has shifted away from blank check support for Kyiv and away from the "for as long as it takes" slogan. Tom Rivers, ABC News at the Foreign Desk.
Looking at your forecast, here's meteorologist Jesse Uppel.
Well, temperatures this morning, not so bad. We're actually on the mild side. That will be the daytime high. And then temperatures really take a fall as we get through the rest of the day. We'll have cloudy skies with the chance of a rain-snow mix by this afternoon, changing over to some flurries by this evening and overnight, and some gusty winds out of the west up to 40 kilometers per hour. An overnight low of -1 will feel closer to -7 with the winds. And tomorrow, a mix of sun and cloud, chance of some scattered showers, even some flurries. Strong northwest winds and a high of 5 degrees. Today's guaranteed high, 8.
And right now in downtown Halifax, it is 5 degrees. It's 4 out at the airport. City News 95.7 has traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the ones in the morning and now in the afternoon at 1, 11, 21, 31, 41, and 51 minutes past the hour. Recapping our lead story now, as Gord mentioned in traffic a couple of minutes ago there, the 102 inbound this morning is closed right now at exit 2A, so traffic being redirected onto Lacewood. A significant crash being reported in that area. At last update, though, police saying no injuries reported, so we'll wait for another update from police on that crash, and we'll have the latest coming up at the bottom of the hour with Steve Gow. City News Time, 9:24.
Number 1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather.
This is City News 95.7 everywhere.
Well, some new stats are showing Canada seeing a significant decline in lung cancer death rates over the past several years.
The annual report issued by the Canadian Cancer Statistics Advisory Committee, the Canadian Cancer Society, StatCan, and the Public Health Agency of Canada says deaths from lung cancer have dropped by about 4% since 2015. Cancer Society epidemiologist Jennifer Gillis says those rates show progress in getting people to stop smoking, as tobacco is a factor in 70% of lung cancer cases. But she says another critical intervention is early detection and treatment. Despite the progress, lung cancer is still the leading cause of cancer deaths in Canada. Karen Rebo, The Canadian Press.
And a new UN-backed report is finding that the major fossil fuel-producing countries still plan to extract more than double the amount of fossil fuels in 2030 than would be consistent with the Paris Climate Accord's goal for limiting global temperature rise. The 2023 Production Gap Report, co-produced by the UN Environment Program and the Winnipeg-based International Institute for Sustainable Development, is examining the disparity between climate goals and fossil fuel extraction plans of Canada, as well as 19 other countries. It says government planning and projections would lead to an increase in global coal production until 2030 and in global oil and gas production until at least 2050. We'll have the latest in business news coming up in 60 seconds. City News Time, 9:25.
Next time on The Todd Vino Show.
12 Nova Scotia municipalities have joined the call for the province to fully implement the Coastal Protection Act. The Ecology Action Centre in Halifax says it's clear the Houston government is shirking its responsibilities by not advancing the act. We'll talk about this on our next show.
Join us for The Todd Vino Show. Weekdays from 10 till 1 on City News 95.7.
City News Time, 9:26. It's time for the business report. Here's Mike Eppel.
Good morning. We're coming into the trading session this morning with the Toronto stock market in a bit of a slump, whereas Wall Street's on its longest winning streak in about 2 years' time. The TSX has been kind of knocked sideways here by falling commodity prices and a downturn for bank and insurance stocks. But it was the energy sector Tuesday that really took the wind out of the Toronto market sails, with the price for oil dropping to a 3-month low, and oil is actually continuing to slide this morning down another 55 cents at 76.82 on lower demand in global markets for oil right now. We saw shares of Suncor drop by 4.1% and Canadian Natural down by 3.6%. Shares of Agnico Eagle and Barrick Gold were down close to 3% as the price for gold slides too. It's down at $1,970 an ounce this morning. It was down $10 yesterday, and the commodities being hampered as well by a strong U.S. dollar. With that market rally on Wall Street, preview to the trading day coming up from Bloomberg in New York.
Wall Street is riding its longest winning streak in 2 years heading into the midweek session. Stocks closed modestly higher on Tuesday for a 7th day in a row on growing expectations that the Fed is done raising interest rates. But some Fed officials say not so fast, warning that it may be too soon for it to let down its guard. Call the exterminator. Apple is pausing development of next year's software updates for the iPhone, iPad, and other devices while it stomps out a proliferation of bugs. Rather than adding new features, engineers were told to fix the flaws and improve the software's performance. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Currency market this morning, Canadian dollar down 0.1 cent, 72.58. Price for the loonie against that U.S. greenback, almost $1.38 on the exchange. This is City News.
City News Time, 9:30.
Number 1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is City News 95.7 everywhere.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, November 8th. I'm Steve Gow.
And I'm Mark Hodgins. Right now in downtown Halifax, seeing some sunshine now, and it is 5 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour.
The premiers of Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan are emphasizing the need for provinces to be at the table when Ottawa strikes housing deals with municipalities. More details to come.
A new report slamming the Federal Fisheries Department for failing to properly monitor Canada's fishing industry.
Getting out of a war zone. That's what even more Canadians are hoping to do. Cross the border from Gaza into Egypt today, as G7 countries now push for humanitarian pauses in the fighting.
And coming up later, IMP aerospace workers in this province expected to hit the picket lines this week. City News Time 9:34. Well, Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan premiers calling on the federal government to bring provinces to the table when striking housing deals with municipalities. City's Chris L.F. with more on yesterday's press conference here in Halifax with Premiers Tim Houston and Scott Moe.
Following a meeting of Canada's premiers and territorial leaders in Halifax this week, Premier Tim Houston says the federal government has been using a divide-and-conquer approach to issues such as carbon pricing and housing.
In this province right here, there's not many projects that the municipality would advance, even in conjunction with the federal government, that the province is not going to be a partner. So let's accept that. Let's acknowledge that up front, and let's have the province at the table to begin with. So we're hoping that the federal government just sees that is common sense and is fair.
Meantime, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says there is a concern about the federal government looking at the potential political benefits of circumventing the provinces in making large funding announcements on its own. The premiers are calling for federal funding that flows exclusively through provinces and territories in order to address housing needs. Chris Halef, City News.
City News Time 9:35. A new report is slamming the Federal Fisheries Department for failing to properly monitor Canada's commercial fishing industry. The report from Federal Environment Commissioner Jerry DeMarco says Fisheries and Oceans Canada lacks the ability to collect timely and dependable data about what is being caught. The report also says that without reliable catch data, the department won't be able to set seasonal catch limits to ensure a sustainable industry. DeMarco's audit says the department responded to the Auditor General's recommendation by creating a new fishery monitoring policy, but he says that policy is yet to be implemented. Nova Scotia's police watchdogs say they will not file charges against police in Bridgewater after an incident early this summer. On June 25th, crews were called to put out a large open fire on the woman's property in spite of a municipal fire ban, according to the Serious Incident Response Team. That woman was preventing crews from extinguishing the fire. A woman allegedly suffered a fractured hip after she fell during an altercation with first responders. However, CERT concluded that the investigation because the woman did not provide a statement, identify an officer, or consent to releasing her medical records.
And a national security watchdog says Ottawa must spur major changes to the RCMP's federal policing program to ensure Canadians are properly protected. Canadian Press reporter Jim Bronskill with the details.
The National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians warns the key program has challenges, from weak governance and staff vacancies to poor data management that undermine its work. In a new report, the committee says federal policing is not as effective, efficient, flexible, or accountable as it needs to be to protect Canadians from the most significant threats. The report says the government should take a clear role in driving reforms to federal policing. Jim Bronskill, The Canadian Press, Ottawa.
Okay, we've got U.S. stock futures up 40 points on the Dow. The NASDAQ futures higher by 7, pointing to a positive start to the trading session this morning as the Dow Jones goes for an 8-day win streak and the NASDAQ will try for a 9-day uptrend. We're already at the longest string of gains in 2 years for the Wall Street benchmarks. The TSX, meantime, has gone against that with a drop of 168 points Tuesday, led by a sell-off for energy stocks as the price for oil this morning continues to slump to another 3-month low. It's down $1.31 at 76.06. There's just been no increase that had been expected for demand for oil right now. So down goes the price for crude. Gold is down $4 at $19.69 an ounce. The Canadian dollar down 1/10 of a cent, 72.5 cents U.S. This is City News.
Well, it's mostly cloudy and 5 degrees in downtown Halifax. Good morning, I'm Steve Gow. Here are the stories making news this hour. Premier Tim Houston and Saskatchewan Scott Moe are asking Ottawa to ensure the provinces are at the table when housing deals are struck with municipalities. Meantime, a new report slams Fisheries and Oceans Canada for failing to monitor the commercial fishing industry properly. Its author saying the department lacks the ability to collect dependable data about what's being caught. Now from Sportsnet Radio, here's Simon Bennett.
Well, lots happening last night in the NHL. Nikita Kucherov, 2 points, now has 11 in his last 3 games and leads the league at 22 total. The Lightning jumped out to a 4-0 lead in Montreal and beat the Habs 5-3. The Flames over Nashville 4-2. The big story there, Jonathan Huberdeau benched for the entire third period. Head coach Ryan Huska says he was just having an off night, nothing more. It took 12 games, but the San Jose Sharks finally got their first win of the season, 2-1 over the Flyers. 3 games tonight, including Sens Leafs in Toronto, 8 o'clock on Sportsnet. It's been a brutal start for the Oilers, who plays goaltender Jack Campbell on waivers with the intention of having him work on his game in the minors. Next action for the Mooseheads, Friday in St. John. The Raptors look to even their early season record at 4-4 as their road trip continues tonight. They face the Mavs, who are 6-1 to start the season, dealing with a groin injury. Precious Achiuwa took part in full workouts yesterday. There's a good chance he returns tonight. Tip at 9:30. With the baseball GM meetings underway, the Jays announced Carlos Feebles will be their new third base coach, with Luis Rivera retiring. Guillermo Martinez is staying as hitting coach, while bench coach Don Mattingly will also be offensive coordinator now. At the Billie Jean King Cup Finals, Canada opens their round robin in Seville against host Spain today. A strong Canadian team led by Leila Fernandez and Gabby Dabrowski, who's had a great year in doubles. That starts at 11 a.m. on Sportsnet 1. From the Sports Center, I'm Simon Bennett.
Amalgamated Transit Union Local 508 reminds you that as Canadians don their poppy this year, they're taking part in a visual pledge to never forget those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Last year, millions of Canadians wore a poppy to honor, thank, and remember Canada's fallen veterans and those who serve today. Your generous donations to the Poppy campaign, used to care for our veterans and their dependents, are greatly appreciated. A reminder from Amalgamated Transit Union Local 508. Proud to honor our Canadian heroes.
You're listening to City News. So key testimony is expected to resume today in the New York civil fraud trial against former U.S. President Donald Trump and his company. Mark Remillard with more.
2 days after her father took the stand, sparring with prosecutors for hours and even the judge overseeing the case at times, Ivanka Trump is now set to take the witness stand in a Manhattan courtroom. State attorneys have sought her testimony as Ivanka Trump has been in her father's inner circle in both business and politics, while she's claimed to know little about her father's financial statements. She tried to avoid testifying, arguing undue hardship and noting that she was removed as a defendant in the case, but the court rejected that effort. Mark Remillard, ABC News.
Elsewhere in the States, the clock is ticking on a possible hospitality workers' strike in Las Vegas, which could bring business at hotels to a halt.
The union, representing everyone from bartenders to bellmen to laundry workers and kitchen staff, says if they go on strike on Friday morning, it would be the largest hospitality strike in U.S. history. Signs are being made and prep meetings are underway. Workers at resorts like Bellagio, Mandalay Bay, New York, Caesars Palace, Planet Hollywood, and Wynn would walk out. 18 casino resorts in all. Negotiations are ongoing heading toward Friday. Alex Stone, ABC News.
Coming up in 60 seconds, while traffic and weather together on the ones. City News Time 9:50.
News is always changing.
Now more than ever.
Listen 3, 4, 5 times a day.
This is City News 95.7.
Everywhere.
East Coast Credit Union is committed to where we live. We are pleased to support programs that help make our community stronger with our award-winning commitment to economic development, financial literacy, volunteerism, and the environment. Whether it's supporting food banks or local events, we work to make a positive impact every day. And you help us make that positive impact by banking with us. East Coast Credit Union, it's where you belong. For a location near you, visit eastcoastcu.ca.
If you've had it with extremely high heating bills, just remember Lennox and Ultimate Home Comfort. Here's George Hill.
With the new Lennox gas furnace system, you get the most efficient, most reliable equipment, professionally installed by our licensed technicians, propane supplied by Ultimate Home Comfort, and Factory rebates up to $200.
What's the first step?
Just call.
Save today. Save every month with Lennox Home Heating from Ultimate Home Comfort. 160 Chain Lake Drive, Bayers Lake, or their new location at 376 Cutler Avenue in Dartmouth.
You've been listening to the morning news on City News 95.7, Halifax's only all-news radio station. I'm Steve Gow. We hope you have a fantastic Wednesday.
And I'm Mark Hodgins. Thanks for listening. We hope you can tune in again tomorrow morning for news anytime. You can follow us on Twitter. Our handle is at CityNewsHFX. And you can always head to our website as well, halifax.citynews.ca. You've heard the news. Now here's your chance to talk about it.
Welcome to the Todd Vino Show, where Halifax comes to talk on City News 95.7.
All right, it's not a bad day out there. Not lots of, I shouldn't say, but some sunshine, some clouds, and pretty mild weather. Not too bad at all for this time of year. Thanks for tuning in and listening. I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness, of course, on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job as always. Lots to get to today. Reminder, we'll open the phone lines between noon and 1 today because it is a Wednesday. That means Dr. John Gillison House Calls goes 11 until 12. This story, going to talk about it a little later on. Actually, I'll touch a bit of this with this when I chat with Don Deseroux in just a couple of minutes. But the premiers of Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan say Canada's need for housing is too complex for provinces not to be at the table when Ottawa strikes housing deals with municipalities. Tim Houston says Ottawa has been using a divide and conquer approach to issues such as carbon pricing and housing. So basically what the premier is saying, these two premiers are saying is that when the federal government is negotiating a deal in which with municipalities in which they will provide money, they say they want to be involved. They want to be at the table because housing is just too complex for them to not be there. Here's what I think is really going on. I think that the Houston government and Scott Moe, for that, in addition to that, they want to be at that table because if there's going to be lots of money coming into a municipality, they want to be involved. They want to be at the table because they want to be seen as being responsible for the money coming in. Look, we're part of the process. And it's a control thing as well. They have a level of control that they cannot let go of. And I think it's interesting and almost there's hypocrisy here. When you think about the fact that this same government, this Houston government, and I just had the housing minister, John Law, on the show yesterday, is passing legislation which will allow the housing minister to arbitrarily approve housing projects in HRM without zero consultation with the municipality at all. None. And not only that, they didn't even have the courtesy to tell the municipality here in Halifax that they were doing this. They found out after the fact. So I think it's interesting that suddenly they're all up in arms over the fact that they're not involved in this complicated housing process when the federal government is negotiating with municipalities, including HRM. And, well, we need to all be at the same table to work and coordinate. Yet, well, when we do business, well, we completely contradict that message. And we completely circumvent the municipality altogether and overstep. I just think it's interesting. And I'm curious what some of you think about this, and it's something that perhaps you can talk about when we open the phone lines, as mentioned, between noon and 1. This story also grabbed, the headline grabbed my eye this morning on the CBC website. Cost of a new Halifax water building in Burnside surges to $89 million. Months before shovels hit the ground, the estimated cost of a proposed Halifax water operation center in Burnside has surged to over $89 million. That's a $37 million jump since February. Almost $40 million jump since February. Halifax Water applied to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board last week for approval to spend the $86 million to build the 9,200 square meter facility on Janet Avenue. The cost will be embedded in future rates paid by customers. So there you go, folks. They're going to get, who knows what type of oversight is involved. How does something spiral out of control in a matter of months to the tune of almost $40 million? And they're saying, well, it's construction cost and whatever. Okay, that's all well and good, but you have to have a better handle on it than this. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And, of course, the review board, Utility and Review Board will approve this. I just think it's just unbelievable that it's just another example of procurement done at the Crown Corporation level or the government level in which it just costs me nothing. Just keep writing the checks. Where's the accountability, folks? That just blows my mind. Anyway, again, some things that you can talk about when we open the phone lines between noon and 1. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. By the way, later in this hour, we're going to give away a pair of tickets to see the Mooseheads on Sunday. So listen for your cue to call. And also, the Glenn Miller Orchestra will be in town later this month, and we're going to give tickets away to that as well. So listen for your cue to call for ticket giveaways later in the hour. All right, now joining me is Don Deseroux, UPEI political science professor. Don Deseroux, thanks so much for joining the show. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Todd.
All right, so the premiers gathered in Halifax over the weekend and early this week and talked about a lot of things. First off, the carbon tax. The Liberals, for whatever reason, decided that they needed to help save some political. They've got a lot of Liberal seats, obviously, here in Atlantic Canada, and they decided that they would carve out the carbon tax on home heating fuel, thinking, I guess, that this would be a political win, but it is. I think it's done the opposite. It's created nothing but more headaches for them, and it's resurged this entire debate across the country. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that was a real misstep. I when that first came out, and I got some questions about it from other journalists. The one thing I did say, and I qualified it, was that at least it gave the Atlantic Liberal MPs some talking points. They could say, "Hey, look what kind of influence we have." But there was nothing else in that program that, to me, would actually translate into winning new votes. If nothing else, because by the time the election is called, people are going to long since forgotten what had happened, because the heating oil prices are going to go up regardless of the tax. That's just the way inflation is. And that's only just one component of it. And the second thing that I said was that if they don't do this as part of a rollout program, they were calling it a pilot, it's a pilot, see how this works, and then make sure that this basically rolls out in different ways across the country, they're going to get hammered. And wow, have they ever gotten hammered? So, there's been a lot of questions about whether this is a sign of problems in the inner circle, the brain trust that the Prime Minister relies upon. Are they in a panic mode, as Pierre Poilievre has said? So there's something going on, and this was not the kind of the careful strategy that you normally see from that government.
Yeah, for sure. Because let's say that they did nothing on this, then we wouldn't be talking about the carbon tax right now, right?
That's right, and I have problems with the carbon tax. I've talked about this before. It seems to put a lot of the burden of trying to solve the problem on the people who are least capable of handling the economic price that we're asked to pay. But that doesn't mean that I don't agree with the general principle. I just don't agree with that this is the best way to do it. So some kind of a revision so that the people who are struggling are not the ones that are shouldering the costs would be a great idea, and that I think should be part of our strategy going forward. But this was just so badly handled, and it opened up, as you said, the floodgates of criticism against the tax, about the regional distribution of support for the Liberal Party federally. It goes on, and so this is not going to go away anytime soon.
All right. Is there any possible scenario in which the Liberals revisit this carbon tax before the next election, or is this truly the hill that they are willing to die on?
I don't know. I have a feeling that they're that they're desperately trying to figure out a way to get themselves out of it. They can't win, and it's their own fault. I mean, they've dug this hole that they're in now. You know, and what's that expression? When you're in a hole, stop digging.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to do. They're going to have to do something. They can't just let this. This is not going to simply go away. They may decide, that maybe we'll just hold on. We won't have an election anytime soon, though that's not entirely in their control, of course. And people will move on, possibly. I don't know. This one just seemed to hit at a different nerve. It wasn't just the fact that people are upset with the carbon tax itself, but with the inability of the government to sort of see what was actually happening and to predict the follow, because they sure didn't catch on that one.
Yeah, and the old kind of worn-out lines when they're being criticized for this by the Conservatives of, well, they don't have a plan, they deny climate change. Those lines don't seem to be resonating or working anymore, right?
No, and that is the common criticism that governments always do to opposition, and say you're only opposing. Well, you know what? That's actually their job. And from a strategy standpoint, sure, it's not a bad idea to have some good programs of yourself that you can point to and say, look what we would do. And as you get closer to an election campaign, of course, that's what the opposition parties will do. But the reason why opposition parties oppose, aside from the obvious, which is that's their job, is that as soon as they come up with their own idea or their own program, that just takes the government off the hook, and then the government simply attacks that program with more resources to cost those things than the parties in opposition have. So it basically takes the government off the hook, and they stop taking responsibility for what they've done and start focusing on what they're claiming the other parties are going to do. So it's not an unusual. I mean, it is the norm for opposition parties to go after and oppose, and this is sort of common way of saying, wait, we don't have a plan. Yeah, there's a point to that, but it's not a strong point, and I don't think the public is paying a whole lot of attention to it.
All right, so I know that obviously the Trudeau government is desperate to change the channel on the carbon tax, and certainly there's going to be a lot of time between now and an election. We don't know exactly when that'll be, but housing seems to be one of these files that they think that they can make some headway on. And what are your thoughts on proving to Canadians through the housing minister, Sean Fraser, that in fact that perhaps this might be a way to change the channel and get some positive vibes going for the Liberals?
Yeah, it might be. I mean, this is an issue that 5 years ago I would not have predicted would be quite the hot button topic that it is today. And I listened to your comments prior to coming on. I think you've hit on some really, really good points there, which some of which, by the way, I had not thought of. So I thank you for that. This is a big one, and it was interesting here in Prince Edward Island. The first day of the legislature open for the fall session. That's all they talked about was housing, and so it might be. This whole question of jurisdiction, that is very much an inside baseball kind of discussion. I don't think the public cares who has constitutional authority over municipalities, provincial or federal. It is provincial, by the way, and they're right about that. But as you pointed out, there's a bit of hypocrisy where we're not bringing municipalities to their table when they're making their plans. But I think the public wants to see action, and they're frustrated with the lack of action. Provincial governments have come up with some plans, and some are sort of working, but it's a real problem for the provinces as well. But basically, in the end of the day, the two levels of government are going to have to work together. But I am impressed, by the way, with the Honourable Sean Fraser. He seems to be doing a pretty good job on what we would call a third rail issue. This is one of the ones that a few cabinet ministers want to get involved in, because it doesn't seem to be one that you can solve. It's kind of like being a health minister trying to solve the doctor shortage. He's getting a lot of attention in Ottawa, by the way, and there's a lot of talk about him as a possible successor for Prime Minister Trudeau, by the way, as well. Yeah. So that's really interesting to sort of see how he has positioned himself.
Okay, when it comes to the premiers and the relationship with the Prime Minister, and I can think back to and I'm dating myself here, but the Brian Mulroney years when they were quite cozy, the premiers and the prime minister, they used to meet regularly, and Stephen Harper, I think, kind of got away from that, and Chrétien did that as well, but Justin Trudeau claimed that he was going to rekindle that relationship and meet with the premiers. Why do you think that's not happened?
Yeah, that's been a real disappointment because it was quite frustrating under the Harper years to not have First Ministers' Conference. They have Premiers' Conferences, but not conferences where the Prime Minister was there. Well, because these are really important, and they really change the way in which governments are able to work together when they make it personal and they can sit down and talk to one another. And I was surprised to read in that story that it has been 5 years since Prime Minister Trudeau had a First Ministers' Conference. That's a long time. And I think the answer is that he realizes that there's few gains to him and a lot of losses, because one by one we see across the country premiers who are not on side with the Prime Minister, and it's now even spreading to Atlantic Canada. You know, our own Premier Dennis King in Prince Edward Island has talked about how it's important for any Premier, regardless of your party, to learn to work with the Prime Minister, because you get things done that way. There's no point, bashing the federal government. We need to work with them, but then you can sort of see, and maybe they're seeing the writing on the wall, that eventually maybe they think it won't be long before there's a new Prime Minister and a new party there, and they want to make sure that they're on side with the CPC as well.
Don, always an interesting chat. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll do it again.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
All right, take care. Don Desreux, UPI political science professor. The wealth of talent that this country, though, has been endowed with and blessed with, I think sometimes we don't recognize or acknowledge that. But if you look over the last 18 years, from then until now, all the Canadian musical contributions is just unbelievable here, right?
No, honestly, as you said, Todd, it's there's a wealth of amazing talent here. And that's why CARIS exists. Our job is to promote and elevate our Canadian artists so that people are aware of the success that artists are having, not just here at home, but also on a global basis. You think about, obviously, major superstars like The Weeknd, and The Weeknd's like one of the biggest artists in the world now, Justin Bieber, Shawn Mendes. Yeah. But every year there's new artists coming out and creating great new music. Last year we had Tate McRae on the show, and she's going to be actually headlining on Saturday Night Live in a couple of weeks. So many great artists, and we're thrilled. Two of those, Charlotte Cardin, who is from Montreal, she was on our 2022 show in Toronto, and she was the big winner that night. She won 4 awards, including Album of the Year, Artist of the Year, Single of the Year. She's making a return to the Juno stage with her new album, 99 Nights, and a band out of Toronto called The Beaches, an all-female rock band. They have a massive hit. It's been number 1 for 15 weeks, Whoa. A song called Blame Brett. So many amazing talents, and a lot of them are going to be on the stage here in March.
Indeed. So obviously, when it comes to categories, what type of are you expanding categories, or how do you determine what to give out and what categories are applicable here?
Yeah, sure. So the Academy has 46 categories that we honor each year, and it sometimes grows, rarely shrinks. We've been adding categories for the last sort of 5 or 6 years. Things like the rap category, we split from rap album to rap single, just because there is so many artists making that kind of music right now. We didn't make any changes this year. We get pitched different categories every single year. We have a nominating and voting category that take all those in and review them. But we made no changes this year, and definitely I imagine there'll probably be some new ones next year.
Yeah, I'll bet. And obviously great for the host city. A lot of economic spin-off. I mean, like we said, it's being broadcast on CBC, so there's great exposure there. There's just nothing but upside for the host city, goes without saying.
Yeah, it's, on average, the Junos brings about $12 million worth of economic impact to the host city. Last year in Edmonton, we were actually $13.4 million. In Toronto, it was $15.5 million. And it's you obviously, again, you see the broadcast, but around that, about 2,500, industry professionals, artists, nominees, sponsors, they're all going to descend on this city to celebrate Canadian music. And that's great for the restaurants, the bars, the Uber drivers, taxi drivers. It really brings a wealth of talent to the city, but also it's about business. There's a lot of business that happens around music.
Okay, if people want all the details, they can certainly find out online. All the stuff's available online, right?
November the 10th at 10 a.m. You can go to ticketmaster.ca, not just for the Juno Awards, but also some of our ancillary events as well.
Great stuff, Alan. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, take care. That is Alan Reid, President and CEO of the Canadian Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences. And if you do think about the footprint of Canadian music, and we go right back, obviously, to the mid to late 60s, when the likes of Neil Young, the Guess Who, Joni Mitchell. I mean, I could go on. I could certainly go on. Gordon Lightfoot. See, this is the problem when you start talking about some of these icons. You start missing and forgetting some of them. But into the 70s, a lot of great April Wine. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Into the 80s, 90s, and today you mentioned, like you said, Justin Bieber. Not everybody's cup of tea, but his footprint on the music scene, the global music scene, Celine Dion. I mean, again, these are just off the top of my head. And I think that sometimes we don't appreciate the contribution of Canadian music on the global scene. And, of course, then you got acts like the Tragically Hip that never made it internationally, not on a big scale anyway. But, man, oh, man, they have become the Tragically Hip are as Canadian as it comes. Rush. Again, I could go on and on with great, and certainly many from this area. I mentioned April Wine, but there are countless artists from Halifax and from Nova Scotia, for that matter. So this is a great event, and it's Nelly Furtado, very talented, and this should be, again, great for the city. He mentioned first time in 18 years, so it's long overdue. A fisherman in Maine lobbied to keep wind farms out of crucial fishing grounds. Will that happen in Nova Scotia? We'll discuss this when we come back. All right, I saw this story recently on the CBC website. A no-compromise lobbying campaign by Maine lobster harvesters has helped keep wind farms out of a crucial lobster fishing area in the Gulf of Maine. And that has some fishermen in Nova Scotia casting an envious eye south of the border. Joining me to discuss all of this is Tommy Amero, fisherman from Pubnico and president of the Coldwater Lobster Association. Tommy, thanks for doing this.
Hi there, Todd. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Also, Chris Fascato, manager of the Nova Scotia Fisheries Alliance for Energy Engagement. Chris, thanks for doing this also.
No problem. Thank you for the opportunity to chat, Todd.
Indeed. So, Tommy, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on what's happened in Maine, first of all.
I think Maine saw some of the same things that we in the fishery industry are seeing here. Lots of question marks, lots of maybes. They feel that lobster fishery is vitally important to coastal communities, the same way we feel here. And they had concerns.
Okay, and the concerns, I guess, might seem a bit self-evident, but what are some of those concerns, and do you share them? Obviously, you share those concerns for potentially this area as well.
We do. The industry in Maine and here are much. They're very similar. There's a whole bunch of question marks. We'd like more information on where they're going to be put, the impacts on the small lobsters, the breeding lobsters, the electrical fields generated by cables. We have concerns of displacement. We've got a bunch of concerns. I'm really we need a long list. We're concerned by all of it. Anything that happens, any kind of industrialization of the ocean is a concern for commercial fishermen.
But I guess in fairness, you're always going to have concerns when it comes to these types of projects, whether it be on land or at sea or whatever. Habitat is always going to be compromised to some degree, will it not, Tom?
And the opposition in New Brunswick says Premier Blaine Higgs' early election waffling is costing taxpayers money. Paul Harpel is a spokesperson for Elections New Brunswick, and says invoices for the various rentals, purchases, and salaries that have been incurred to date are still coming in. Green leader David Coon says what's harder to calculate is how much work has been slowed down in the civil service since June. Liberal leader Susan Holt says work on things like healthcare, housing, and municipal reforms falling by the wayside as the province waited on Higgs to make up his mind on a snap election. City News time, 10:33 right now in downtown Halifax. It is cloudy and we're at 6 degrees. I'm Mark Hodgins. For more news, follow us on Twitter or head to halifax.citynews.ca.
Time to talk. This is the Todd Vino Show on City News 95.7. Now, here's Todd.
All right, I saw this story recently on the CBC website. A no-compromise lobbying campaign by Maine lobster harvesters has helped keep wind farms out of a crucial lobster fishing area in the Gulf of Maine. And that has some fishermen in Nova Scotia casting an envious eye south of the border. Joining me to discuss all of this is Tommy Amero, fisherman from Pubnico and president of the Coldwater Lobster Association. Tommy, thanks for doing this.
Hi there, Todd. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Also, Chris Fascato, manager of the Nova Scotia Fisheries Alliance for Energy Engagement. Chris, thanks for doing this also.
No problem. Thank you for the opportunity to chat, Todd.
Indeed. So, Tommy, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on what's happened in Maine, first of all.
I think Maine saw some of the same things that we in the fishery industry are seeing here. Lots of question marks, lots of maybes. They feel that lobster fishery is vitally important to coastal communities, the same way we feel here. And they had concerns.
Okay, and the concerns, I guess, might seem a bit self-evident, but what are some of those concerns, and do you share them? Obviously, you share those concerns for potentially this area as well.
We do. The industry in Maine and here are much. They're very similar. There's a whole bunch of question marks. We'd like more information on where they're going to be put, the impacts on the small lobsters, the breeding lobsters, the electrical fields generated by cables. We have concerns of displacement. We've got a bunch of concerns. I'm really we need a long list. We're concerned by all of it. Anything that happens, any kind of industrialization of the ocean is a concern for commercial fishermen.
But I guess in fairness, you're always going to have concerns when it comes to these types of projects, whether it be on land or at sea or whatever. Habitat is always going to be compromised to some degree, will it not, Tom?
Obviously, yeah, for sure. And we're not claiming exclusive rights to the ocean by any means. But the fishery is, like we talked about earlier, it's vitally important to Nova Scotia. There are marine mammals. There are, the effects from, like I said, the electromagnetic fields, migratory birds. We just want some of our questions answered. Again, we're primarily concerned with displacement and the effects that these are going to have on fish stocks.
Okay, Chris, what's your take? What's some of your thoughts, general thoughts on this?
Well, I'll be honest. When we look back and looked at and saw what was able to be done in Maine, I had to applaud them. They were able to bring their concerns to bear, and they were able to basically get a carve out of the proposed wind areas such that their fishery could survive in light of all these uncertainties that might exist. And as I look at it, and as we look at it as the Alliance, we know that wind energy is a priority for the provincial government and for the federal government. We also know that the fishery is, it brings over $2 billion into the economy of Nova Scotia each year, and that should not be endangered. So really, this is more of a question of, can we find a solution which allows both a strong fishery to survive in light of climate change and be able to adapt to that, and be able to, at the same time, have offshore wind energy still contribute to the economy as well. Really, this is about making sure that
that those areas that are productive and important remain, and that we answer a lot of these questions that Tommy has raised. There is a lot of questions about what will happen when these things get out there. Will you be able to fish in them? What's going to happen to larval dispersion? What's going to happen to the habitat? What's going to happen to the food web?
All right. So, do you have some level of confidence, Chris? How would you describe how you feel that this can be figured out?
Well, I'll be honest. We've got a regional assessment process that's underway. We've seen that come about in the media fairly loudly. We are engaged in that process. There's a good committee of people there. They seem to understand the concerns of the fishing industry. They recognize the importance of the fishing industry, and they also recognize that there are data gaps. So if we have sufficient time to plan this right, we can do it right. If we try and rush our way through to the finish line just to get these turbines on the water, we're probably going to do it wrong. So it's about making sure we're patient, making sure we ask the right questions, and make sure that we listen to the positions being put forward to find a solution that kind of meets everybody's needs, but it's never going to be there, right?
All right, Tommy, what about yourself? Do you have some level of confidence, or what are your thoughts on us figuring this out?
I think Chris put it very well. I think the regulations for the offshore renewable sector, they're not even really developed yet. They're being drafted simultaneously with the regional assessment underway. I'd like to think that this isn't going to be rushed. We're, as a fisherman, this is a centuries-old industry that sustained not just Nova Scotia, but all of Atlantic Canada. Give or take 19,000 seafood jobs associated in Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. And really, that's really my concern, is that the Nova Scotians understand that this seafood industry is a viable industry. It's a $2.6 billion, give or take, industry in Nova Scotia. It's not something that should be taken lightly, and it's not something that should be just kind of put on the shelf and figured out later. Like Chris said, we've got time to do this the right way. We've got time to have the right meetings. We've got time to do this in a way that mitigates losses for the fishery. Mm-hmm. That it's done right. Let's just take our time and make this work the right way for everybody.
All right, so you would think that there would be plenty of room in the ocean for these types of projects, that they could coexist. But is there? I'll ask you this, Chris. Is there some type of, I guess, when it comes to wind farms, shallow water, from what I can gather, that's why Sable Island has been identified. Off Sable Island as being ideal. Obviously, the depth of the water all matters. But are there conflicting interests when it comes to the types of parts of the ocean in which these wind farms would be developed and your fishing?
You've really hit it right on the button there, because at this point we're looking at this saying, okay, are we looking for, let's say, fixed developments, or now there's floating developments out there? So if you're in a fixed development, then yes, you're looking at the top of a bank. If you're looking into floating turbines, you're now in deeper water, so you're down into the basins. And these are some of the questions that we're asking, of saying, okay, well, what is planned to come out in the future, and then we can help you try and deploy it. So one of the exercises that the fishing industry is doing right now is saying, okay, we know, as you say, it's a very large marine space out there, and there is space to share. So let's see if we can define some regions that are, we would consider them to be lower conflict, because there might not be heavy, intensive fishing activity now or anticipated while climate change kind of shifts where our fisheries are going. It's really important as well to say, okay, when somebody decides to put an industrial development out there, fisheries can't just adjust overnight. We sometimes have to accept that we're following fish all of the time. So if you put an industrial development where fishing is going to be, we might not be able to go and find that fish somewhere else. So really the challenge is to identify those areas which are not being used by the fishing industry. And then we can say, these are priority areas. Now let's look at some of the ecosystem impacts of what a development could be on the indirect effects of the fishery in question. So I do think there is room out there for us to coexist. We're working to try and achieve those with the fishing industry as a whole, and it's just a matter of basically getting it over the finish line.
All right, Tommy, who might you look to be, I guess, a champion of industry here or on your behalf?
I think Chris Fiscato's group does a great job in putting the fisheries concerns out there. The regional assessment's done a great job of doing a bunch of town hall meetings. I want to go back to something that we had mentioned earlier about, isn't there a lot of room out there? Nova Scotia's in a really kind of a unique situation where that if you look at the regional assessment map, there's not a whole lot of places off the coast of Nova Scotia right out to the 200-mile limit that isn't fished in some way, shape, or form, whether that's lobster, halibut, crab, whelk, sea cucumber, surf clam. We've got a really good problem in that we have a lot of area that's productive and economically important. The regional assessment is going to have its hands full to find a place that isn't important. It isn't biologically important. Mm-hmm. It's a good problem to have if you're a Nova Scotian. If you're a Nova Scotian in general, especially if you're a Nova Scotian fisherman, because we have some of the best fishing areas in the world, in my opinion, and I think the numbers prove it. It's going to be hard to find somewhere that it doesn't affect somebody. I think right now we're really just trying to mitigate those effects.
Gentlemen, thanks to both of you. It's been an interesting chat. I appreciate it, and we'll certainly keep track of how this goes, and I'm sure we'll be talking again. Thanks to both of you.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, take care. Tommy Amiro, fisherman from Pubnico, president of the Coldwater Lobster Association, and Chris Fiscato, manager of the Nova Scotia Fisheries Alliance for Energy Engagement. Cost, lack of insurance keeping Canadians from seeing the dentist. We'll get to this when we come back. All right, this story recently on the Global News website with the federal government's early steps for a dental care plan expected to be announced before the end of the year. New data from Stats Canada suggests more than 1 in 3 Canadians had not visited a dentist over the span of 12 months between 2021 and 2022. Almost 1/4 say this was due to cost. Dr. Heather Carr is Canadian Dental Association president and joins us for a chat. Dr. Carr, thanks for doing this today.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. I'm the National Canadian Dental Association president, but I'm actually talking to you from Halifax. I'm a Nova Scotian.
Yeah, I saw the 902 number. I thought, there we go. Excellent. So way to represent the our fine city on the national stage.
Happy to.
All right. So were you surprised by what Stats Canada revealed here?
Not at all, unfortunately. The Canadian Dental Association has been advocating with the federal government for many years in order to provide better access to care, and the percentages have been fairly stable, sadly. You can look at it. The positive is we have almost 70% of Canadians who have access, but the truth is it's very concerning that over 30% don't. And we've been advocating for populations, vulnerable populations, persons with disabilities, low income, and our seniors who, once they hit 65, quite often lose their dental benefits. So sadly, it's not a surprise, but it's hopefully going to start a conversation, which is very important.
Indeed. Do you feel as though, and I'm sure that you do, but that dental health does not get I guess the priority that it should when it comes to government spending, and of course the federal government, as I said in the intro, is addressing that to a point, but it's been a long time coming, right?
Yes, I think that dentists, and I'm hoping it's getting out there in the public, just as you're asking me, that your oral health impacts your overall health. There's no doubt that individuals with better oral health have overall health. And there's a lot of ways, and I can go into them if you want later. But we were pleased to see the federal government make this investment in oral health care. But now what we're waiting for is to see if they do it properly. There's a lot on the line here. There's a lot of individuals who need care. We don't want to see a plan that's heavy on administration and light on care. We want to see preventive treatment for these patients so that we can minimize future problems, and we want to see them get the care they need when they need it. Unfortunately, there hasn't been much communication with the provincial dentists who are going to have to administer this plan. So we're waiting to see this design and find out exactly how the government will help these patients who really are in desperate need of care.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, light on administration, but I think that there's obviously going to be administration, and the details. I would think there would be there should be plenty of consultation with organizations like yours. Is the federal government consulting properly on this, do you think?
Well, I think that, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
In all honesty, the Canadian Dental Association has been, at the table with the federal government, not as a negotiator, but as a source or trusted resource of information. We have provided details as to what it takes to run a dental practice, what type of care that these individuals may need, because in some cases they may not have had care for years and years. But whether they listen is the million-dollar question. And I personally have been asking them to engage with our provincial associations for a long time now, because, they represent the members who are going to have to administer this plan, basically. And if there's too much red tape and they're spending more on administration than the actual care for my patients. I'm a practicing dentist, 35 years. Like, I can see patients in my practice who could benefit. So it's a huge concern because every dollar that goes to administration is taken away from a patient as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Is there some concern that we know, as we've been talking about, a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but some people obviously benefit from having private insurance through their employer or whatever it might be, and that's great. But is there some concern that if a public system is rolled out, that might be compromised in some way, or compromise private insurers and the way they deliver dental care?
Yeah, absolutely. Because part of the reason that almost 70% of Canadians have access to care is primarily, not all, but a lot of it is through having a private dental insurance. And if the government plan is, I doubt it will be as good as a private insurance plan.
Yep.
And I would see Canadians and especially the employers drop these benefits. If anything, I think it's a critical benefit that employers provide for their employees, because, I think about, people who come into my office, they have toothaches. They have to miss a day's work. They can't get their teeth fixed up so they have a nice smile. It affects their mental health, and also when you're going for a job interview. So really, yeah, it is a big concern. We call it an unintentional risk,
right.
And we're not honestly sure if the federal government has taken it seriously enough.
Well, again, these are all tied in with people on the ground, like you said, your own practice. You understand the cost, you understand the needs, and if the federal government is creating a plan and they're not consulting with people like you, then it will be a flawed plan. There's no doubt.
It is my concern. And as I say, I have been at the table in so much as we've been providing information, but they have not engaged with our provincial associations. And, you can provide a lot of good facts. You can provide a lot of good data. I can speak as a dentist who cares greatly for my patients and how they're going to be taken care of. But at the end of the day, they're making the decisions. And all I can do is provide the information and hope they make the right decisions.
All right, you mentioned the fact that oral health is tied in with overall health. Can you just in the last few minutes we have kind of drill down into that, if you will, pun intended?
Drill down. We don't use that word. I prepare a tooth. I don't drill a tooth. No, I absolutely can for you. Well, the most obvious, are the oral diseases. You've got gum diseases, cavities, infections, which might lead to an extraction or root canal. And another thing that is quite important for us as dentists and the dental hygienists and the rest of the team is we're looking for signs of oral cancer. So when we talk about health, the things that can impact your mouth, some people would be very aware of, others less. The smoker. If you're a smoker, you tend to have a little bit more periodontal disease, and you certainly have a higher risk for oral cancer. If you have diabetes, on a few occasions, I've actually had patients come in with a big change in their gum health, and I've encouraged them to go see their medical doctor to be tested for diabetes. So you have to take that disease very seriously and keep your mouth nice and clean. Stress. I mean, we've all heard of people who are cracking teeth and grinding and chewing on their teeth. So stress is a huge factor, and having that cared for your mouth also helps your stress levels. Even alcohol, and the big one that I'm sure would be no surprise is how much sugar you consume, because it's not good for your overall health, and it's certainly not good for your teeth at all. So it's why we really push the preventive aspect, because if you don't catch things when it's early and first occurring, then you can be in for a whole lot more problems as time goes on. And then by the time you get in there, I feel really bad for patients, because sometimes they're looking at losing a tooth or having major treatment as opposed to what might have been, a small cavity a few years ago.
Dr. Carr, interesting chat. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm very happy to, and I hope I provided some helpful information. You have a great day.
Okay, take care. Dr. Heather Carr, Canadian Dental Association, a president and practicing dentist here in our province.
Back here at home, a new report says the Federal Fisheries Department is doing a poor job of monitoring Canada's fishing industry. Federal Environment Minister Jerry DeMarco says that Fisheries and Oceans Canada lacks the ability to collect timely and dependable data about what is being caught. DeMarco says that means the department doesn't know whether commercial stocks are being overfished. He points to the collapse of the Atlantic cod population in the 1990s as an example of how expensive and difficult it is to recover depleted stocks than it is to keep them healthy in the first place. The armed forces are reminding the public that the Bedford rifle range is off limits. It is not clear if an incident prompted DND to issue the reminder, but it says that no one can enter the rifle range without permission, be it on foot or on an ATV. Trespassing poses a significant safety risk given the use of live ammunition. The range is about 250 acres in size, and it's used to train personnel and law enforcement in the use of small arms. City News time is 11:03 right now in downtown Halifax. It is mostly sunny and 5 degrees. I'm Blake Priddle. For more news, follow us on Twitter or go to halifax.citynews.ca.
Is the Todd Vino Show on City News 95.7.
Dr. John, you're my medicine man. Dr. John, you're my medicine
All right, it's time for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. The way to take part is 902-405-6000. If you'd like to chat with Dr. Gillis, if you've got a health-related question or concern, give us a call. Again, the number is 902-405-6000. And a reminder, of course, we will be opening the phone lines for your calls in general, whatever you've got in your mind between noon and 1. So look forward to hearing from you. Perhaps what some of you might want to talk about. I just saw this story this morning on the CBC website. I'll read a bit of it as we connect with Dr. John Gillis. Auditor General Kim Adair does not comment on work, or rather, Nova Scotia's Auditor General is looking into the provincial government's purchase of an unfinished hotel that is now being converted into a patient care facility. Auditor General Kim Adair does not comment on work in progress, but an update on her office's website lays out the scope of work. It does not provide a timeline. The story goes on. Here's a quote. It says, this audit will determine whether the province exercised adequate due diligence in order to obtain value for money in the selection of 21 Hogan Court for conversion to a transitional care facility, and whether initial procurements complied with provincial procurement policies. The story goes on to say the Tories paid Cresco Holdings $34 million for the property just off Highway 102 in Bedford in January. Health department officials have said the conversion of the site into a transitional care unit will cost an additional $15 million. So again, something that you can talk about potentially when we open the phone lines between noon and 1. Now joining us, as mentioned, is Dr. John Gillis for house calls. Dr. Gillis, thanks so much. How is your week going so far?
No major complaints. The Leafs
won a game this week, so that doesn't happen every week.
Big comeback against Tampa Bay. That was not just any win. That was, I mean, the Leafs were down 4-1. I must admit, I was watching the game and I got fairly depressed, turned it off, and then decided to turn it back on later and saw that they tied it up and went up. So I think that's a big win for the team, don't you think, Dr. Gillis?
It is, but what's wrong with Samsonov? 4 goals and 12 shots. I mean, that's not the first time.
Yep.
I don't know, man.
I think Wall is kind of he's looking more and more like he can get the job done. But Samsonov's, they're paying him substantially more money, so they're probably going to want to play him, I would think, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's the problem. So we'll see what happens. I mean, hope springs eternal, doesn't it?
It indeed does. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. I've got a few news stories that caught my eye that I want to ask you about, but first let's go to the phones. Talk to Lynn. Hello, Lynn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to ask the doctor a question about walk-in clinics.
Sure.
There's a couple of them in Dartmouth that are listed, and when you call, they only accept people that are already patients of that clinic to the walk-in clinic. What is the point of that? I mean, there's so many without a doctor, and in my mind, they should be accepting people that, need to see a doctor. And this would only send more people to the emergency and the other one clinic that I know of that accepts everybody. This is in Dartmouth.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know specifically which one you're talking about, but this is fairly common. Existing practices, often have what they'll call a duty clinic, meaning, let's say they have 10 doctors and you're a patient of, Dr. Smith, but, one of them will take turns on a given day running kind of an urgent care walk-in clinic for that clinic. What I often hear the words duty clinic or duty doctor, which I think is a Nova Scotian-ism because I haven't heard it anywhere else. But that's fairly common. So, you can't make an appointment with your doctor, but within the group, they have a clinic that for more urgent things, they have somebody covering that day, that evening. So that's probably what you encountered when you call that particular clinic.
Yeah, there's two of them. There's two of them in Dartmouth, Woodlawn and Portland Street clinics. And the one on Baker Drive is lined up down the hall and out down the stairs and out the door most mornings. It's really the only one in the area that I know of. But why would you list those as walk-in clinics on the health site if they're only accepting existing patients of that clinic? It just doesn't make sense to me, and it just backs people, more people up on the emergency.
Okay, hang on a sec. Go ahead, Dr. Gillis.
It's hard to get a word in. What site are they listed on? You said
the health, yourhealthns.ca, the new one that you can go to and browse for health in different areas. The walk-in clinics for Dartmouth that are listed there. There's two of them that, they don't accept the general public.
Yeah, so that I agree with you. That should be clarified. It should not. It should not say walk-in clinic, or it should say walk-in clinic for patients of that practice, or it should clarify that. That is.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how that gets clarified. I wouldn't know how that would get clarified, but I think it could be. I agree with you, because it's misleading when you see that and you see the list of them. You think, oh, there's several, in my area, and there's only one.
Okay, fair enough, Lynn. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
You.
All right, 902-405-6000. Kathleen, hello.
Hi, I'm just calling in because I had to go to emergency yesterday and it was a good experience, I must tell you, in and out in 4 hours. And they diagnosed me with Streptococcus B because my neck at the bottom was accumulating fluid and quite big. And I'm on quite heavy antibiotics right now. And I was wondering, how can they diagnose you that without taking a blood test? Is that possible?
So they diagnosed you with Strep B what? A throat infection, a lung infection, or a blood infection?
It's not. They said it's in the visco is in the side of my neck. Like I can swallow I don't have a sore throat. It's on the outside, and the skin is all red and inflamed.
The skin is red and inflamed on the outside of your neck?
Outside, yes. And they put me on a very high antibiotic and seems to be working really fast. I'm nowhere with fever and as terrible as yesterday, but I'm just wondering how you can diagnose that without, or am I wrong? You don't need a blood test for that.
Well, no, blood test wouldn't tell you anything. It would be a swab or a point of care test, an antigen test. What antibiotic did they put you on?
My glasses on, don't get old.
Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it. The short answer is cephalexin. Yeah, that's a standard antibiotic for skin infections. So most skin infections are either staph or strep, and sometimes they have an appearance to them. I would assume that they, based on what they saw, told you that because those are the most common bugs that cause skin infections.
Okay. And my second question, is that I inject an immune suppressant every day. Do you think that could have a big role in me getting this?
What kind of immune suppressant?
Anakinra, Kineret.
So, I mean, sure, anything that suppresses your immune system can make you more likely to get infections, but it doesn't sound like you've had a problem before. So probably not.
Never.
It's probably a coincidence. Yeah,
okay.
It's probably a coincidence.
Okay. I was just wondering about that because my stomach is pretty upset before I got it, and it's even more upset now. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathleen. Take care. Okay. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. Give us a call if you'd like to chat with the doctor, if you've got a health-related question. 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back.
You're listening to The Todd Vino Show, where Halifax comes to talk. City News 95.7. Once again, here's Todd.
All right, it's House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. Give us a call at 902-405-6000 if you'd like to chat with Dr. Gillis. Wealth of knowledge and experience. Standing by to take your health-related call, 902-405-6000. Eric, hello.
Hey there. I just wanted a question about blood pressure. Doctor asked me to monitor my blood pressure, so I got one of the machines, and I was reading about how to take your blood pressure properly, and you got to sit still and take some deep breaths. And isn't that just lying to yourself? Because why do you take your blood pressure when you have to be so relaxed and so still? When I'm never like that, wouldn't it make more sense to take your blood pressure when you're just walking around?
I mean, the standard for taking blood pressure is at rest because it can fluctuate a lot. It can also fluctuate with different situations. So, generally, try to get people to stay up.
Hey, Dr. Gillis, it's hard to hear you right there. I'm not sure if you're in a bad cell zone.
No, I think it's
the other call?
Noise in there.
Okay, Eric, I'm going to let you go. If you can just listen on the line, okay? Go ahead, Dr. Gillis. Sorry about that.
It's fine. I think the answer is that's the standard is when people are resting to see what their baseline is, knowing that blood pressure does go up and down with activity and such, but it can fluctuate wildly. So the standard, to test is what people are most of the time when they're sleeping or when they're relaxed. Certainly there are people who maybe they don't relax, but that just appears to be the determined standard for measuring, and that's what we've gone with, and that's what the science and the data is based on. So, for what it's worth, that's pretty common.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. Bill, hello.
Hi, gentlemen. How you doing today?
We're doing well.
Thank you for taking my call, Dr. John. Another question on the blood pressure. Actually, I've been taking my blood pressure back since May. And it's always been middle 40s, low 50s. And September 29th, I took my first blood pressure pill, Lodipine, 5 milligrams. And what's curious about this is that it's been a month. I've been taking readings every second day, and my blood pressure has not dropped one iota. Actually, and for some readings or most readings, it seems to have even gone up a couple of notches. My reading on the high is 141, 150, 155, 145, 153, et cetera, et cetera. The second reading is the 80 is always good, 82, 81, 80, and my pulse is always 55, 56. My question is this. I'm meeting with my doctor at the end of the month, and I anticipate the doctor may say to me, all right, Bill, let's increase this medication. So is there any reason why I can't increase my medication now so that in 2 weeks' time when she says we'll increase it, and I'm going to say, no, I already increased it and still no change. Is there something else that could be going on here that's not making my blood pressure? And I exercise half hour every morning when I get up with stretches. I go to the gym for an hour and a half during the day. I get the occasional run in. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I just can't see the reason why my blood pressure is high like this. Thank you, doctor.
Okay. Thanks,
I just
Bill.
want to be clear. You originally said your blood pressure was 40 or 50. I think you meant 140, 150. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, doctor. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So there's a couple things. It may be that it's just not the right blood pressure med for you. It could be that your blood pressure monitor is not accurate. It's probably worth comparing it to another one. It could be diet. Some people, they get on blood pressure pills. They think that's going to fix everything. I'm not saying you did this, but, they start eating more salt and it sort of overcomes the positive benefit of the blood pressure pills. So, your numbers are up a little bit. They're not catastrophic. I wouldn't start changing your pills without your doctor's advice. There's no real reason to do that. I would wait. The reason not to do it is because you're not trained to do it and you didn't prescribe it, and you shouldn't change something that you didn't prescribe and or may not be fully knowledgeable about. So I would wait till you go have your appointment.
Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your information.
Okay, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Dan, hello.
I have two quick questions. I was wondering, I have COPD. I was wondering, is it normal for me not to like the heat? And does COPD make you dizzy like you're going to faint?
COPD is a lung disease. So, if your oxygen drops, you can definitely feel lightheaded, or if you're working hard to breathe. The condition itself shouldn't make you dizzy, but the impact of it, again, meaning, if you're having trouble getting your oxygen in, or if you're working hard to breathe, those things can make you dizzy. But I guess it always, dizzy is a favorite word in medicine because it means something different to different people. What does dizzy mean to you?
Lightheaded, more or less.
Like you feel like you're going to fall down, or like you're spinning,
yeah.
or what?
Yeah, well, you're going to fall down, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so, COPD by itself shouldn't do that. But again, if your oxygen's down or you're working hard to breathe, if you're dizzy, you should get yourself checked out to determine what your blood pressure is, your heart rate, and any of a number of other things that can contribute.
Okay. Thank you very much, doctor.
Okay, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Jeff, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to ask Dr. Gillis a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Dr. Gillis, I'm 100% in favor of vaccines. Don't get me wrong. When I ask this question, I have the Twinrex vaccine, the Shinrex vaccine, COVID vaccine, the influenza, and now the RSV vaccine. How does this actually affect the immune system?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean. That's a very general question.
Just wondering, does it weaken the immune system where we have the immune system to protect ourselves otherwise?
No. So, vaccines work in different ways. A lot of vaccines are either dead virus or what they call live attenuated, meaning the virus has part of it is alive, but they've changed it so it can't infect you. So it basically gives your immune system a heads up. It's like a database. So your immune system goes, okay, I recognize you, virus. I recognize this version of you, and I'm going to remember that. so that when you or one of your buddies comes along again, I can fight you. Think of it as entering information into a database. The newer vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, basically teach the body to recognize pieces of viruses, like in the case of COVID, the protein spikes on the virus, so that they can fight them. So, the whole premise of a vaccine is to make your immune system stronger so it can fight it. If it's not activated, it can't fight it. People get sick or they die. So that the entire point of it is to make your immune system stronger, to make it aware of these viruses. So when they come along, much as countries defend themselves and pay attention and have radar and coastal defense, so that if something bad comes along, they don't just wait around for something to happen. They seek information, they monitor, they prevent. That's what vaccines help the immune system do, so that they recognize. And it's quite fascinating, some of the patterns that we've seen, in older folks who we might have expected to do poorly with some of the flu strains, actually didn't do too bad, because some of them as kids had been exposed to the Spanish flu and had some residual immunity that had been passed down, that their immune system went, haven't seen you in years, but I kind of know you. You look familiar. I'm gonna fight you. So it's about setting up the immune system's memory so that it can then go to war when it's ready. So, I would argue clearly that the whole point is to strengthen and prepare the immune system for battle when the time comes.
Thank you very much for the airtime. I appreciate that.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. Just a quick email. Somebody asked how they get. Let me see. Where's the email here? I thought I had it open. Yes, quickly. Can you ask Dr. Gillis from Yvonne how many people are still on the wait list in Nova Scotia for doctors? I'm not sure if you would be privy to that info. I think it's public information, is it not, Dr. Gillis? Around 150,000, isn't it?
I think it's somewhere around there. I haven't looked at it recently, but it's something in that neighborhood.
Do you feel that that's truly reflective of the need? Because the Premier kind of deflects, saying that people who get doctors don't always report that. So do you feel that this list is truly reflective of the need?
I do. I mean, we're still under siege in the ER, and you just hear about it every day of people who don't have doctors, and unfortunately, based on the demographics, people retiring, people doing other things, people leaving is not helping. And again, that's not the fault of anybody in particular right now, but it's a demographic problem. Is that we have a lot of docs in their mid to late 50s, early 60s who are slowing down, moving on to other things, or retiring, and are being replaced by a new generation who have a much better work-life balance, but are not taking the numbers that people have taken in the past. And that was something that nobody planned for 20 years ago, but is the reality that we face today.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. Give us a call if you'd like to chat with the doctor. 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back.
Number one for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is City News 95.7 everywhere.
Good morning. It is November the 8th. I'm Blake Priddle in downtown Halifax. It is mostly cloudy and 4 degrees. Here is the City News 95.7 top story. Regional police still have the 102 inbound shut down to traffic at exit 2A, the exit to 301. Emergency crews responded to a serious crash in that area earlier this morning, and there is no report of any injuries. Inbound traffic on the 102 is continuing to be redirected to Lacewood. HRP is expecting crews to be on the scene for a number of hours. Canada's largest grocery chain says that an incoming code of conduct could raise food prices for Canadians by more than $1 billion. In a November the 1st letter to the committees working on the grocery code, Loblaws chief financial officer says the grocer cannot endorse the code in its current form. Steering Committee co-chair Michael Graydon says there is no evidence to Loblaws' claims. Metro and Empire, which owns Sobeys, have affirmed their commitment to adopting the code when it's finalized. The province's police watchdog says they found no reasonable grounds that police in Bridgewater broke the laws in relation to an incident in June. The Serious Incident Response Team was investigating reports that a woman suffered a fractured hip after she fell during an altercation with first responders. The incident occurred after crews were called to put out a large open fire on the woman's property in spite of a municipal fire ban. The woman was said to be preventing crews from extinguishing the fire. The premiers of Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan say that Canada's need for housing is too complex for provinces not to be at the table when Ottawa strikes housing deals with municipalities. The issue was a prominent part of the communique released on Monday following a meeting of provincial premiers and territorial leaders in Halifax. Tim Houston says that provinces want to make sure their relationship with Ottawa is fair and honest, while adding that there aren't many housing projects in the province that his government isn't eventually going to partner on. City News time is 11:33 right now in downtown Halifax. It's mostly cloudy and 4 degrees. I'm Blake Priddle. For more news, follow us on Twitter or go to halifax.citynews.ca.
It's now time to talk. This is the Todd Vino Show on City News 95.7. Now, here's Todd.
All right, it's House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. James, hello.
Yeah, thanks for taking the call. Just wondering, Dr. Gillis, I heard people asking about medication that wasn't working. A while ago, at my workplace, the Health and Wellness Committee did a DNA test. If you know, it was totally, if you felt like doing it, and you could find out which medications mostly worked for you and didn't. And I'm just wondering if people are aware of it, and do you guys use it?
When you say you guys, what do you mean you guys?
Sorry, yeah, like physicians, like doctors and stuff. Like, is it something that you guys know, you practice or know about it or mention, or is this something that's not well known? I'm just curious.
I would say it's not widely used. I've looked at it a couple times. I'm not convinced that it's not just marketing hocus pocus, if you want the truth.
Gotcha.
There is, there is a lot to be said in genetic testing and helping to identify conditions. There's also a lot of profiteering and fear-mongering from that, which we see a lot of in the U.S. So, in my mind, it's a balance between offering the best tests. I mean, I was just talking to, somebody yesterday who's in the States who's down getting, all kinds of tests, some of which I think are quite useful and some of which I think are just, a bloody waste of money.
Right.
So what is the evidence that a DNA test proves that a medication will work for you or not? That's always been my question. And I'm yet to be convinced that that the data or the science is good enough yet. Might it get there?
No.
Absolutely. I'm just not. I'm not convinced yet. But I try to keep an open mind because what used to be cutting edge and crazy, is now normal. So you have to balance, avoiding, marketing and witchcraft and things that are unsafe with keeping an open mind to technology and advancements that will be truly beneficial in the future. And that is a challenge, to be fair.
Great answer, and I appreciate the input. I was just curious. I thought it'd be a cool topic to bring up.
Okay, thanks, James.
100%.
Appreciate it.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Bernie, hello.
Hi, could I speak to the doctor, please?
You sure can. Go ahead.
Yeah. I didn't call for this, but speaking what you were just speaking about, I went down to Dartmouth General I had pills for tract infection. They threw them right in the garbage, told me I couldn't take them. But anyway, I didn't call for that. Doctor, do you know much about a link that they put on you to test your heart? Yeah, they used to have a monitor that they put on and you didn't have to do anything. You kept it on for 24 hours and you took it off. This link is a different thing. I don't know much about it, but I have two different directions, from two different people in the gynecology thing, but cardiology. One told me that I had to, every time I felt something, palpitation or something, mark it down, the date and the day. Number one, I cannot do that. Number two, I don't have any palpitations. I was 2 months ago, so that's when this report went to my doctor. And my pulse, if I want to check my pulse, I'd have to just sit in my chair and, test them because you can't hear your pulse. But at the same time, one told me down there that I don't have to do that. I don't have to check my pulse. They called a link, I think. We'll do it. And the other one told me, no, I had to do it. So I just want to know and one told me to change the thing every day. The other one said, no, 2 days. So what is right?
Yeah, dear, I'm afraid I can't help you. I'm not really sure what device you're talking about. Whoever gave it to you, I would call them back and ask them to clarify the directives. I mean,
it was recommended. It was recommended by Dr. Young.
He's going to ask you a question, okay, Bernie? Go ahead, Dr. Gillis, with the question.
Do you have this device now?
Yeah, now. I just got it last week.
Okay, and how long are you supposed to keep it for?
2 weeks.
Okay, so I would give Dr. Young's office a call and just ask him.
It's not nothing like I had before, They said the other one, they put on you for 24 hours. This one, they put on you for 2 weeks. I don't mind if I just know what to do with it, although it's also color-coded, and I can't see, so I'm having a job there, too. But anyway, well, put up with that. I just want to know what I'm the really right way.
I would give Dr. Young's office a call and ask him to clarify that for you.
Okay.
Okay, Bernie. Thanks for the call. Yeah. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Don, hello.
Hello there, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Dr. Gillis, in the last 2 or 3 years after I retired, I've been suffering from numbness and tingling in my toes that seems to have progressed over those 2 or 3 years. Some nights it keeps me awake with little storms of sharp, stinging pains in my toes. And along with this has come frequent palpitations in my heart. I'm certain it's some kind of neurological problem, and the doctors have been trying to diagnose what it can be. Recently, my doctor is semi-retired, and I've got a new doctor now who seems to be rather more curious about it. I'm 63. I'm a very light drinker. I don't smoke. I'm a little overweight. I'm reasonably active. I wouldn't say I was as active as I was in my working life, but is there something that you can think of that off the top of your head that would point you in a certain direction?
No, unfortunately not. Those are very general symptoms. I guess I would ask you what you've had done already.
The stress test, I've had lots of blood tests. I've not been directed towards a neurologist. Today, for example, my toes are numb and the top part of my feet are numb, and that seems to be a pretty slow progression. It doesn't seem to be going backwards. Although the sharp little electric pains that keep me up at night, those have diminished. But, I can wiggle my toes together, and a couple of the toes, I don't feel. And it's surprising to me. I just can't think of where we should be looking.
You're not diabetic, I take it?
No, there's no sign of diabetes at all. That was the first thing the doctor looked at. There's no swelling at the base of my legs. I've had sciatic nerve problems over the course of my life, but nothing debilitating. I don't always believe what I read online, too, and I see all kinds of many different possibilities, and I suppose that there are many possibilities, but I just curious what you think.
Well, I think you probably should have an EMG study, which is a nerve conduction study on your feet, which is something that your family doctor can get moving. And I would presume your family doctor has checked your circulation, but if there's any question about your circulation, then that should probably be checked as well. But probably the next step would be getting an EMG study moving, which is an electromyogram, which is a study of the nerves. So maybe start with that request.
Okay, is that would that be directed towards a neurologist?
No, it would be directed towards the hospital who does the test.
Oh, okay.
Anybody?
Oh, I only say that because the doctor seems to think that neurology is a long wait for an appointment, or a neurologist rather. Okay,
It definitely is. The test can be ordered separately from that.
Okay.
Okay, Don. Thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. House calls. Tim, hello.
Hey, guys. Dr. Gillis, so when I get a cold, I get a cough, and it usually takes me 4 to 6 weeks to get over a cough. So this time I had gotten a puffer from my doctor, and it still took me almost 4 weeks to get over that cough. Is there anything else that I could try, or you suggest?
Well, I mean, I guess the question is, what's the issue? Is it? Are you struggling to breathe? Is it affecting your life?
Just get the tickle in my throat.
Yeah, so, I mean, we see a lot of post-viral coughs where people do need some steroid puffer to settle down the inflammation that sometimes sits there. What kind of puffer were you given?
I don't know the name of it, but it's a 2-in-1. It's like the powder one. She said it's a fairly new kind of puffer. It's not the salbutamol and it's not, or I guess it maybe it's salbutamol and Flowment combined. It's the powder.
Okay.
I forget what the name of it was.
The other thing is a common cause of ongoing cough is postnasal drip. If you're having, allergies or congestion, a decongestion or an anti-allergy pill or a combined pill might help you. Another common cause of ongoing cough is acid reflux. Some people sometimes don't realize that that's happening. So you'd want to rule out those things. For the most part, these ongoing coughs come from one of those things. And if it's irritating, sometimes a cough suppressant just to help with the symptoms till it goes away. One of the DM preparations, dextromethorphan, which is, Benylin DM, Robitussin DM, anything with DM in it are the better cough suppressants. So try and treat the symptoms. Anybody who has a prolonged cough that's not going away, it should at some point have a chest x-ray or, just to make sure something else isn't going on. But, it sounds like it probably just is the residual of a virus. But those are a couple thoughts for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. We get some room for you, get some open lines. If you've got a question for Dr. Gillis, 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back.